So I thought I would start with the front squat because it's my favourite. From the get-go you can see the bars not level. The hip flexion, knee flexion, ankle flexion looks pretty good, although the external rotation on the left hip is clearly larger than on the right hand side. Foot position looks fine, and again the skill of the movement looks pretty well coordinated. You see that again from the side view, working hips, knees and ankle, premixillary to distal. Trunk position looks a little bit like a wink right at the bottom, like it tucks under. But if I zoom in and go closer, you'll see the lumbar's actually quite stable, and it's more a lack of thoracic extension and the curvature in the upper back that's flexing me forward. From the rear view, again you can see the bar's not level, and I try and reset to set it up. Sitting back into the squat really well, loading the heels with a full foot contact. My head's down a little bit, but I do look quite comfortable in the bottom of the squat. From the back it's also harder to see that external rotation on the left hip, and you can also see the pelvis is pretty neutral, so the asymmetry of the bar is probably from the upper body. The asymmetry of the bar does get hidden in the back squat, but I think the external rotation on the left hip is highlighted a little bit more. There is a lot more tucking on a back squat than any of the other three movements. Again, the coordination of the hips, knees and ankle looks good. The feet are nice and flat, but then again, looking closer, the torso is relatively straight, as is the lumbar. So that tucking might actually come from a bouncing action in the moving, usually from catching with Olympic weightlifting. The back squat from behind, you can clearly see I load the right leg more than the left, and I shift over to that right hand side, which you can also see as I come up, I shift back over to my left on ascent. Again, as I mentioned, the bar looks pretty level here, especially in relation to the front squat and the overhead squat you're about to see. The overhead squat from the get-go, you can see the left shoulder or left arm is a lot higher, even if the torso looks relatively equal. The external rotation on the left hip isn't as bad here, but I think that loading of the right leg must also be present, leading to that imbalance in the bar path. The torso looks the best here on the overhead squat, and you can see I'm sitting back well with a nice flat foot contact on the first descent. Good coordination again. But as I move into the last rep and start to come up, you'll actually see I lose contact with the heel, and the weight is on the ball of the foot as the center of pressure rather than the midfoot. On the rear here, again, the hips, knees and ankles work really well, but if you zoom in closer, you see that uneven bar comes from tightness in the right hip moving over to the left shoulder. Again, probably from the loading of that right leg. And there's the marker for the lopsided bar, shall we call it. Personally, I'd say these issues are probably more of a capacity in mobility and flexibility, asymmetries in the body rather than a lack of skill.